I'm Jim Monahan from Professional Baseball Instruction and the Baseball Health Network, along with Baseball Health Network founder Steve Hayward and Seattle Mariners Major League prospect Patrick Kivlehan. And one of the things that we want to talk with you about is a very hot topic among youth sports these days, and that's specialization. Steve, we see it a lot where kids are playing sports, and in this case, let's say baseball, on a year-round basis, and it's being linked to a lot of things, not the least of which is an increase in injuries.
Sure. I mean, playing the same sport year round, it's a lot of repetition, especially when you talk about the throwing arm. And a lot of these kids' bodies aren't really conditioned to be able to handle that workload throughout the entire season. So they're currently, obviously, breaking down.
And Patrick, you have an interesting story. You played football and baseball during high school at St. Joseph's in Montvale, and then you end up at Rutgers on a football scholarship. You don't play baseball at all for 3 years.
Nope.
You get to your senior year, decide to play baseball again, and the next thing you know, you've been drafted by the Seattle Mariners. What was that like in terms of your training when you were doing both sports in high school?
Definitely in high school, in football season, it was time to lift as much weight as possible, and in baseball season, you scale it back a little bit. Try and be a little more flexible, a little more, ready for the longevity of that season.
And in terms of weightlifting, how different was that for baseball to football?
It wasn't too different. Football, I try and do a little more, get as strong as possible. Baseball is more about maintaining and not getting too weak.
And when you were in high school, what was that schedule like? You're training 6 months a year for one sport and then playing, and then 6 months training and playing the other sport?
Sure. In the summers and fall, I would strictly train football, and then in the winters, I train for baseball, and springtime it'd be baseball season.
And Steve, one of the things we mentioned earlier in the intro with regard to year-round training, especially sports-specific year-round training, is how it can help lead to an increase in injuries that we're seeing. In Patrick's case, you had him training year-round, albeit for two different sports. Is there a danger there as well?
I don't think so. I think there's different movements and there's different training styles and methods for each individual sport. So I think that he had a pretty good balance between the two sports.
And Patrick is somebody who did that, trained for two different sports and basically trained year-round. Was there a point during each season, or at the end of each season, I should say, where you just said, I'm going to take it off for a week or two, whatever, and not do anything, or at least dial back on what you were doing?
For sure. This is one of the things where you got to know your body and you got to know what you need and what you want. So at the end of the year, if you're beaten up and you can't take it anymore, take a 2-week break, relax a little bit, unwind. And not just physically, it's mentally too. You're just coming off a long season, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, whatever you're playing. And you need that little mental and physical break to get yourself going again for the next season.
And Steve, in addition to being a coach and the founder of the Baseball Health Network, you're also the father of 4 children. And I know you have that same battle with your kids. I only want to play this sport, or I don't want to play that sport. How do you deal with that?
I make my kids play other sports. I want them to be athletic kids. I want them to be athletes. I don't want them to be baseball players or just football players. And trying other sports to me is going to teach different movements, different mentalities, and I think that's only going to help them down the road for whatever sport they choose to play.
Now, in the case of a child who may only want to play one sport, maybe he has no interest whatsoever in playing another sport, how do you approach that child and gear his training so that you are giving him a chance to build up the proper muscles that he needs for that sport, while at the same time not leading to an injury?
Well, the first thing I would do is try to convince him to play another sport. Find out why he doesn't want to play another sport. What are his fears of playing other sports? And making him realize that playing other sports can help you for baseball. If baseball is your goal and your dream, that's great, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in order to get to that level, you need a certain level of athleticism to be able to compete against some of the best players, in whatever sport you're playing.
Now, both of you played both football and baseball in high school, and Patrick, obviously, you played both at the collegiate level. Were you able to take some of the mentality of a football player, and you hear this all the time from coaches, all right, guys who played football, they bring a different mentality to a baseball field. Did you find that you were bringing a football mentality, quote unquote, when you played baseball?
Yeah, I did. When I switched over to baseball, I just kind of brought that mindset of, I'm going to physically impose my will on you, and I'm tougher than you, and I've been through more than you, and anything you've done in baseball, I've been through 10 times worse playing football, so that's only going to help me and make me stronger on the baseball field.
And is there a baseball mentality that you can bring with you as well to football?
Sure. You don't want to get too low on yourself. Football is a game of struggles. You go through slumps, but you got to be able to get yourself out of them. So just keep that cool, calm, collective mindset.
And Steve, how about you going from that football mentality to baseball and backwards?
No doubt about it. I mean, I know that it may be a lot mentally tougher, certainly physically tougher. But like you said, like when you're a football player, imposing your will on somebody and having that almost like that killer instinct mentality on the mound absolutely helped me.
Patrick Kivlehan, Seattle Mariners Major League prospect. Steve Hayward, founder of the Baseball Health Network. I'm Jim Monahan. For more, go to baseballhealthnetwork.com.